Hey, so I wanted to address a comment that came through on YouTube yesterday because I think it points to something important. And that's the level of consciousness at which we approach myers-briggs and how the way that we approach myers-briggs reflects our general level of consciousness. So I'm going to go ahead and read the quote here. It says, "If Russell Brand represents a typical ENFP, I don't like ENFPs. Utter twat." And then he or she goes on to explain why, in particular, they don't like Russell Brand. Now, this is about the lowest level of consciousness at which you can approach myers-briggs. This is basically the same level of thinking where racism and bigotry exist. You take a small group of people who fit under a larger label, assign certain traits that you believe you recognize in them, and then project those traits onto everyone across that entire label. Now, I think a useful way to think of myers-briggs is that it's like training wheels. It's like training wheels to come to deeper levels of understanding. It's not the actual thing. It's not the thing that you're after. We're not trying to put people into boxes. It's not like once you know someone's myers-briggs type, you've got them figured out and then you don't have to think anymore, done. It's only the very beginning. And people of the same myers-briggs type can be radically different from each other. Myers-briggs type is a map, and it is not a detailed map. It's a map, and it is not the territory. We have to come up with generalizations in order to function. We can't see everything as being entirely unique. It's not like every time we see a person or we see a thing, we are seeing it with completely fresh eyes, like we've never seen anything like this before. Now, we're making generalizations all the time, but we run into trouble when we think the generalizations are actually the thing or the person. There's a brilliant man named Alfred Krasibsky, and a lot of his work centered around the idea that the map is not the territory. So we can have maps, useful maps that point to things that help us get to places, but we don't want to confuse the map with the place that it represents, with the actual territory. They are not the same thing. There's a great quote from Alan Watts I'm going to read here. It says, "The abstract system takes over from the physical, organic situation. As a result, we've run into a cultural situation where we have confused the symbol with the physical reality, the money with the wealth, the menu with the dinner. And as a result, we are starving from eating menus." So we're trying to eat the menu instead of the food. Now, when it comes to people of a certain myers-briggs type, if you know their myers-briggs type, that is only a very small piece of the puzzle. And I think the more evolved you become as a person, the more other factors come into play in terms of how you approach how you want to be related to or involved with them, or how you think about them, or whether or not you like them. Two people of the same type can be extremely different from each other. There are so many factors that come into play when it comes to people's personalities. You've got their birth order, their Enneagram type, where they were raised, what language they speak, what culture they grew up in. There are so many factors, and generally how evolved they are, which in a lot of ways I think is probably more important than their myers-briggs type. And I think it's useful to approach myers-briggs as, again, training wheels. Something that you can use as a shortcut to get to more meaningful and useful understandings of people. It is not about taking people and putting them in a simple box so that you just no longer have to think about it. Oh, they're an ENFP, I don't like them. That's the lowest level at which you can think about this. Cheers.